Most people live like they have forever. They put off dreams, delay experiences, save money for a future that may never come. But what if that mindset is costing you the best years of your life? This video breaks down one of the most powerful ideas you'll ever hear. Use your time, money, and energy when they're at their peak, not when it's too late. We're not talking about reckless spending. We're talking about living fully, about turning memories into your greatest return on investment. This is a wake-up call, not to die broke, but to die fulfilled. Let's dive into the mindset of die with zero. Most people spend their lives chasing security, saving, planning, delaying, holding back, all for the promise of someday. We're taught to accumulate, to sacrifice the now for the later. But what if that later never fully arrives? What if, in trying to play it safe, we actually miss the best parts of life? The central idea behind Die with Zero is this: money is a tool, not a purpose. The goal isn't to die rich. The goal is to live fully. And that means rethinking everything we've been taught about time, value, and how we use both. Imagine this. You work 40 years, save diligently, retire comfortably, and die with half your money unspent. That might seem like success on paper, but think about what that leftover money represents. It's not just unused funds, it's unlived experiences. Trips you didn't take, friends you didn't visit, memories that never happened. Life is not a savings account. It's a collection of moments. And the tragedy isn't running out of money, it's running out of time while still having something left in the bank. The book begins with a fundamental shift in mindset. Stop maximizing wealth and start maximizing life experiences. Every dollar you earn holds potential energy. And like any energy, it decays over time if not used. A dollar at age 30 isn't the same as a dollar at age 70. Why? Because your ability to enjoy that dollar physically, mentally, emotionally changes. There are windows of opportunity in life where experiences hit harder, feel richer, and create memories that last longer. Wait too long, and those windows quietly close.
This leads to the core argument. Your life has a curve, and so should your spending. In your youth, you have time and energy, but often not enough money. In middle age, you might have the money, but less time and growing responsibilities. In older age, you may finally have both time and money, but less health. So instead of stacking everything for the end, the book suggests a radical rebalancing. Spend more when experiences matter more. That doesn't mean reckless spending. It means intentional living. There's a practical idea introduced early on called time buckets. The concept is simple but powerful. Divide your life into decades, your 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on, and list out the experiences you want in each. Not just general goals, but vivid, personal dreams. Travel to Japan with your friends before everyone has kids. Go scuba diving while your body still welcomes risk. Take your parents to a place they've always dreamed of before age makes it harder. Each bucket becomes a prompt. What should I be doing now that I might not be able to do later? By mapping your life like this, you stop treating the future as an abstract destination. You start realizing that some things have expiration dates. Not because they're impossible later, but because they won't feel the same. A road trip with your best friends in your 20s hits differently than in your 50s. Backpacking with your partner before kids brings a magic that can't be replicated. Time buckets remind you that life isn't one long stretch. It's a series of unique phases, each with its own opportunities and urgency.
The book also challenges the default obsession with saving just in case. Of course, planning is important, but too much caution becomes its own kind of trap. The truth is, most people oversave. They assume worst-case scenarios and then delay their joy indefinitely. But statistics show that many retirees never even touch the money they've saved. They scrimp and sacrifice for decades and then never spend what they worked so hard to protect. The book asks a bold question. What's the point of saving your whole life if you never actually live? It's not about being careless. It's about being conscious. Instead of hoarding money blindly, ask, what's the return on this experience? Not in dollars, but in meaning, in joy, in memory. Because the most valuable currency we have isn't money. It's time combined with health. That's what gives money its power. That's what makes experiences rich. A 5-star vacation means little when your body is too tired to explore. A fancy dinner doesn't hit the same if your partner passed 5 years ago. Wealth is only as good as your ability to use it meaningfully now. And this is where the book draws a hard line. Spending too little is just as dangerous as spending too much. Both are forms of mismanagement. Both waste potential. But while overspending is easy to see, underspending hides behind praise. People call it discipline, responsibility, maturity. But often it's just fear. Fear of running out. Fear of letting go. Fear of trusting that life is meant to be lived, not just prepared for. The book dares you to look at your own habits and ask, am I saving for something real or just saving out of habit?
Now that we've reset the way we think about money and time, let's go a level deeper. If life is made of experiences and money is the tool to access them, then the goal becomes simple. Maximize your net fulfillment, not your net worth. Net fulfillment is the total value of meaningful experiences you collect over your lifetime. It's not just about pleasure or luxury. It's about memory, connection, joy, growth, and the stories that stay with you long after the moment is past. So how do you measure fulfillment? It's not easy, but you can track whether your days feel alive or empty, whether you're living with intention or drifting. Most people think in terms of how much money do I have? The book shifts that question to how much life have I lived? That question is far more revealing, because you can have millions in the bank and still feel hollow. You can reach retirement and realize you never really explored the things that made you feel human. This is where the idea of experience dividends comes in, one of the most powerful concepts in the entire book. An experience dividend is the ongoing value you get from a moment, even after it's over. Let's say you take your family on a safari. That trip costs money, sure, but what you gain is not just the trip itself. It's the stories told around dinner tables, the bond between you and your kids, the memories that resurface every time you see a lion documentary. That trip keeps giving, long after the expense is gone. Those are experience dividends, and they're worth far more than a number on a spreadsheet.
In contrast, many purchases don't generate dividends. Buying a second car you barely drive. Upgrading to a bigger TV that doesn't change how you feel. Those things lose value almost instantly. But well-timed, deeply felt experiences, they appreciate in value over time. They become part of who you are. That's why the book urges you to shift your spending toward experiences that accumulate meaning, not just things that accumulate dust. Another key insight. People often delay experiences under the illusion of control. I'll travel when the kids are older. I'll start painting when I retire. We'll go on that road trip next summer. But the truth is, life isn't always on our side. Health changes, people move, relationships drift, opportunities fade. Time doesn't pause. So the best moment is rarely later. It's almost always now. Not recklessly, but consciously. If something matters to you and you can afford it without real sacrifice, the book says, do it. Because waiting has a cost, and that cost is usually invisible until it's too late. The book also addresses a difficult truth.
Many people live as if they're going to get a second life, as if they'll be 35 again, as if they'll have energy forever. But every year, your window narrows. The version of you who exists today with your current energy, mindset, and passions won't exist again. And some experiences are only available to this version of you. This is the health curve, another concept that radically changes how you plan. Because money means nothing if your health limits what you can do. And it's not just physical health, it's emotional bandwidth too. In your 20s, maybe you're curious, adventurous, and unafraid. In your 40s, maybe you're more cautious or tethered to obligations. So that feeling of wild spontaneity, it's not just tied to your body, it's tied to your season of life. And if you don't use that season wisely, you don't get it back. That's why the book pushes you to do the bold, the playful, the meaningful before that version of you fades. Then there's the question everyone asks. What about leaving money for your kids? Isn't it selfish to spend it all? The answer isn't don't leave anything, it's don't wait until you're gone. The book recommends giving your kids their inheritance while you're alive. Why? Because money has more impact when it's given when needed most, not at the end. A $50,000 gift when your child is 30 and starting a family is far more valuable than $300,000 when they're 60 and already financially stable. Giving earlier also lets you see the joy. You get to watch your support make a difference. You get to share the experience. And you can guide it with wisdom instead of leaving it up to fate or estate lawyers. Plus, it aligns with the core philosophy. Money should be used while it can still create joy, growth, or relief. Waiting until death often means that value is diluted and sometimes lost. And it's not just physical health, it's emotional bandwidth too. In your 20s, maybe you're curious, adventurous, and unafraid. In your 40s, maybe you're more cautious or tethered to obligations. So that feeling of wild spontaneity, it's not just tied to your body, it's tied to your season of life. And if you don't use that season wisely, you don't get it back. That's why the book pushes you to do the bold, the playful, the meaningful before that version of you fades. Then there's the question everyone asks. What about leaving money for your kids? Isn't it selfish to spend it all? The answer isn't don't leave anything, it's don't wait until you're gone. The book recommends giving your kids their inheritance while you're alive. Why? Because money has more impact when it's given when needed most, not at the end. A $50,000 gift when your child is 30 and starting a family is far more valuable than $300,000 when they're 60 and already financially stable. Giving earlier also lets you see the joy. You get to watch your support make a difference. You get to share the experience. And you can guide it with wisdom instead of leaving it up to fate or estate lawyers. Plus, it aligns with the core philosophy. Money should be used while it can still create joy, growth, or relief. Waiting until death often means that value is diluted and sometimes lost.
We also need to talk about fear. Most people don't oversave because they're greedy. They oversave because they're afraid. Afraid of being a burden. Afraid of bad luck. Afraid of regret. These fears are valid, but they need to be measured, not just obeyed. The book encourages you to use smart financial planning like annuities or simple simulations to set a floor for security. Once that floor is in place, everything above it is life fuel. Not emergency backup, not off-limits wealth, but fuel meant to be used. Too often, people cling to that surplus out of habit, and decades pass. Opportunities vanish, relationships change, and suddenly they're wealthy and full of regret. The book invites you to make peace with uncertainty, to accept that no life is perfectly predictable, and that's okay. It's not about recklessness. It's about releasing the illusion of perfect control and choosing to live while you can. This idea can feel radical in a world that praises restraint and glorifies delayed gratification. But the truth is, balance is what matters. Not indulgence, not deprivation, but rhythm.
planning with your heart and your head, living with wisdom and courage, using money not to build walls around your life, but to unlock it.
As we keep unfolding this mindset, the next concept reshapes everything: the memory dividend curve. Picture this. Every time you invest in a memorable experience, you're not just paying for the moment, you're creating a stream of future joy, because that memory will continue to return to you again and again. That's the dividend. The more powerful the memory, the longer and richer the return. Now, compare that to money left sitting in an account. You might gain interest, yes, but that growth is hollow if it doesn't translate into lived moments. A safari with your kids at 35 will return more emotional value than giving them a financial inheritance at 75. The safari creates bonding, awe, gratitude, laughter. The inheritance, while generous, might be met with practicality. It might pay bills, it might get saved again. But rarely does it change lives, not like shared moments do. This brings us to a shift in how we look at age. Most financial advice paints a picture where life ramps up toward retirement. You work hard, save hard, and then you finally get to live. But the truth is, that model is broken. Why? Because not all years are equal. You can't simply shift your dreams into old age like items on a to-do list. Your health, flexibility, interests, they change. So if you wait too long, you may find the door has already closed. The book introduces the idea of a life curve. In the early years, you have energy but little money. In the middle, you usually have both. And in the later years, you may have money, but your health and drive begin to decline. So the goal isn't to delay life until retirement. The goal is to distribute your experiences wisely across your life curve to match your resources with the type of life you want to live in that season.
You start seeing that there are windows in life. Windows for romance, windows for adventure, windows for wild, spontaneous decisions, for family bonding, for building your body, for exploring your art. These windows don't stay open forever. If you miss them, no amount of money later can bring them back. That's what makes this book so urgent. It's not telling you to spend recklessly, it's telling you to spend intelligently, with full awareness of time. One powerful tool suggested is the time bucket exercise. Here's how it works. Instead of a generic bucket list, you divide your life into time ranges, your 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on. Then you assign experiences to the decades where they fit best. Want to hike Machu Picchu? Probably belongs in your 30s or 40s, not 70s. Want to take your grandkids to Disney? Maybe your 60s. By doing this, you're not just dreaming, you're strategically aligning when your energy and resources match the opportunity. This practice grounds your desires in reality. It also helps you see how precious your time truly is. Each decade has its own currency, and once spent, it's gone forever. That's why planning your life first, then fitting your finances around it, is the reverse of how most people do it. But it's far more fulfilling. It prioritizes what matters before it's too late. Then comes the guilt, the part of us that says, "But what if I run out?" That fear is legitimate, and it's why the book advocates for calculated risk, not blind spending. Tools like annuities, financial planning software, and basic projections can help you define a safe threshold, a point where you know you've saved enough to meet basic needs. Once you hit that point, you can stop accumulating. Beyond that line, more savings just means more missed life.
And let's not forget, the more we delay life, the harder it becomes to switch modes. Many people build their entire identity around frugality, around saving, around restraint. But if you train your brain for decades to never spend, to never indulge, to never live fully, it becomes almost impossible to flip the switch at 65. That's the tragedy. Not poverty, but psychological resistance to joy.
That's why it's so important to practice spending intentionally along the way, so you don't just save money, but also preserve your ability to feel alive. And this leads into the quiet heartbreak so many people face: dying with regret. Not because they didn't save enough, but because they never went on that road trip, never moved to that city, never started the book, never danced barefoot at midnight. They worked, they saved, they were responsible, and then time slipped away. And when they looked back, they had money, but they didn't have memories. The book says, don't let that be your story. Don't chase some vague number. Don't live for applause. Don't build a life that looks good on paper, but feels empty in the heart. Instead, build a life of moments, of meaning, of energy exchanged with the world. That is how you die with zero. Not broke, but full. Not reckless, but complete.
The next major idea takes us into how we view giving, not just to ourselves, but to others, especially family, children, and causes we care about. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people wait far too long to give. They imagine an inheritance as something that comes at the end, like a final bow after life is done. But if you wait until death to give, you miss the moment when your gift could have made the biggest difference. Think about this. A 25-year-old receiving help with college or starting a business will experience a life-altering shift. A 45-year-old getting a late inheritance might just use it to pay off a mortgage or stash it away. The emotional and practical return is dramatically different. Giving early doesn't just help more, it also connects you more deeply to the impact you're making. You get to see it, feel it, share in it. And that's a kind of wealth most people never get to enjoy. This ties directly into the broader principle that money has no value in isolation. It only matters in context: who has it, when they get it, and how it affects their life. So instead of obsessing over leaving a legacy of dollars, the book pushes us to think in terms of legacy moments. What do you want your loved ones to remember? Your bank balance, or the time you took them traveling? Your careful estate plan, or the feeling of being seen, supported, and inspired while you were still alive? That's why strategic giving while living, is such a powerful shift. It also changes the way you view your financial arc. Instead of hoarding, then dumping, you're orchestrating life. You're consciously transferring resources while maximizing emotional return. You're alive to watch the fruit of your labor grow in someone else's story. The next major idea takes us into how we view giving, not just to ourselves, but to others, especially family, children, and causes we care about. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people wait far too long to give. They imagine an inheritance as something that comes at the end, like a final bow after life is done. But if you wait until death to give, you miss the moment when your gift could have made the biggest difference. Think about this. A 25-year-old receiving help with college or starting a business will experience a life-altering shift. A 45-year-old getting a late inheritance might just use it to pay off a mortgage or stash it away. The emotional and practical return is dramatically different. Giving early doesn't just help more, it also connects you more deeply to the impact you're making. You get to see it, feel it, share in it. And that's a kind of wealth most people never get to enjoy. This ties directly into the broader principle that money has no value in isolation. It only matters in context: who has it, when they get it, and how it affects their life. So instead of obsessing over leaving a legacy of dollars, the book pushes us to think in terms of legacy moments. What do you want your loved ones to remember? Your bank balance, or the time you took them traveling? Your careful estate plan, or the feeling of being seen, supported, and inspired while you were still alive? That's why strategic giving while living, is such a powerful shift. It also changes the way you view your financial arc. Instead of hoarding, then dumping, you're orchestrating life. You're consciously transferring resources while maximizing emotional return. You're alive to watch the fruit of your labor grow in someone else's story.
From here, the book turns its focus on the experience economy, the idea that our deepest satisfaction doesn't come from things, but from doing. Studies confirm it. Happiness from buying objects fades quickly. Happiness from experiences, a trip, a shared dinner, a creative class, lasts longer and leaves a stronger emotional imprint. Experiences embed themselves into memory. They become part of our identity, and when shared with others, they deepen relationships. In contrast, stuff tends to sit. It breaks, it dates, it gets forgotten. It's passive. But experiences? They live on in the stories we tell, in how we changed because of them, in the photos we revisit. So if you want a rich life, don't just own things, design moments. This mindset forces a reevaluation of how we approach our calendar. It asks, are you scheduling meaning into your life? Too many people drift through weeks, months, years, reactive, overworked and disconnected. But a life well lived is deliberate. It's structured around energy peaks, around windows of health and interest, around relationships. That's why planning isn't just about efficiency. It's about ensuring your values show up in real time. One of the most transformative ideas is to front-load your experiences. Most people delay pleasure, delay travel, delay bold choices. But the truth is, your energy and openness decline faster than your bank account. What you can handle physically, emotionally at 35 is dramatically different than what you can handle at 70. So if you wait, you may find the window closed. The money's there, but you're not the same person anymore.
And let's be honest, aging is real. You won't always be strong, mobile, curious, or bold. Time and biology are ruthless. Pretending otherwise is denial. That's why a big part of dying with zero is accepting your mortality early. Not in a fearful way, but in a freeing way. Once you realize your time is finite, you stop wasting it. You stop making decisions from fear. You start living on purpose. This awareness also influences how we approach the end of life. Rather than seeing it as a slow fade, you can design it. You can choose where you want to be, who you want around, what kind of care you'll need, and how you'll wrap things up with clarity and peace. This isn't morbid, it's responsible. And it allows you to live more fully now because you're not avoiding the truth, you're embracing it. The final message of this section is profound. Don't let your life be a savings account. Let it be a spending plan. Not reckless, not impulsive, but aligned. Spend your time, your money, your love, and your attention on the people and moments that make you feel most alive. And do it now, not someday, because someday isn't promised. Let's talk about something that keeps most people stuck, the trap of oversaving. It sounds counterintuitive, right? We're told to save, 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 that discipline and caution are the marks of a responsible adult. And in many ways, they are. But there's a hidden danger in turning saving into a reflex. When saving becomes the automatic answer to every decision, when we default to maybe later instead of asking why not now, we begin to lose something essential, the capacity to enjoy. Here's what happens. After years of frugal living, you develop a mindset of scarcity. Even if your bank account is full, your brain still operates like you're broke. You resist indulgence. You second-guess every trip. You feel guilty buying comfort. You hesitate to say yes to joy, not because you can't afford it, but because you've trained yourself not to feel worthy of it. That is the hidden cost of chronic oversaving. It warps your relationship with money and with pleasure itself. So what's the fix? Awareness is the first step. You have to catch yourself in the moment. Ask, is this resistance rational or just a habit? Am I skipping this experience because it truly doesn't matter to me or because I've been conditioned to delay life? That's a critical question, because if your default is always no, your life becomes a museum of missed moments. The book encourages us to intentionally rewire our habits. That means scheduling joy. It means budgeting for fun, for adventure, for spontaneity, not just for bills. It means realizing that living well is not a reward at the end, it's the reason we work in the first place. You don't have to wait until everything is perfect to do something that brings you joy. In fact,
Waiting for perfect is often just a way of staying stuck.
Another important point the book drives home: your last check should bounce. Not literally, but conceptually. The idea is that you should aim to use up your resources in alignment with your timeline. That doesn't mean dying penniless and desperate. It means making peace with the idea that money is not meant to be buried with you. It's meant to fuel your life, not outlive you. This requires something few people want to face: a rough estimate of your death date. Most of us avoid the subject. It's uncomfortable. It feels morbid. But if you don't estimate your time left, you can't make a plan. You can't pace your spending. You can't prioritize. You just drift. And drifting leads to regret. Knowing your likely lifespan, even as a guess, helps you make sharper, more courageous decisions. And here's the deeper truth: confronting death isn't scary. Avoiding it is. Because when you refuse to look at the clock, you pretend you have endless time. And that illusion keeps you stuck in routines, putting off dreams, numbing out. But once you acknowledge that the clock is ticking, every day becomes sharper. Every someday becomes soon. You stop waiting. You start living.
Now, let's talk about the emotional resistance that comes with choosing this path. Guilt is real, especially if you come from a culture of sacrifice, especially if your identity is tied to being responsible, modest, selfless. The moment you start choosing joy, some part of you might whisper, "You're being selfish." But here's the truth: you can't give what you don't have. A drained, joyless version of you doesn't serve anyone better. Living fully allows you to love more deeply, give more generously, and inspire more honestly. You also might face judgment. People might not understand your choices, why you're spending more time traveling, why you downsized your house, why you took a sabbatical. But you're not here to live someone else's life. You're here to die with your version of zero, not theirs. And only you can define what that means. The final piece of this puzzle is grace. You won't do this perfectly. Some decisions will feel uncertain, some risks won't work out. Some moments will pass by, but that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's alignment. Are you living a life that feels like you? Are you making choices that reflect your real priorities? If so, you're on the right path.
We've spent the last 5 parts rethinking everything we've been told about money, time, and purpose. And now, it's time to bring it home, to ask the big question. What do you leave behind when you've lived a full life? Not the bank statements, not the investments, but the real legacy. The one that's built moment by moment, memory by memory. That's the secret buried in Die with Zero. It's not just a book about spending. It's about living wide, not just long. It's about presence, boldness, precision. It's about having the courage to use your resources, your money, time, attention, and love while they still have value, while you still have value. Because that value isn't static. It fades, it shifts. And when you die, whatever you didn't use disappears. And yet, there's beauty in that impermanence, because it means you have urgency. You don't get to sit this one out. You don't get to wait until all your ducks are in a row. Life doesn't wait. And when you start living like time is limited, not from panic, but from clarity, you start to make decisions that actually reflect who you are. Let's go even deeper. A truly lived life creates ripples. Think about the people who changed your world not just with money, but with time, attention, presence, joy. Those are the people who invested themselves. They didn't leave behind just things. They left stories. A moment that changed your trajectory. A hug you never forgot. A shared experience that shaped your perspective.
You can be that person, not by saving more, but by showing up more. By being there when it counts. By investing in relationships now, not just planning to later. That is the essence of what this book teaches. Don't die full of potential. Die empty because you used it all. Now, let's look practically at how you can take action. First, assess your timeline. Not just how long you might live, but how long you'll be healthy, curious, and mobile. That's your window. Define it. Visualize it. Then, chart your experience plan. The moments you still want to live, the trips, the relationships, the creative risks, the skills you've been putting off. Don't make a bucket list. Make a life design. Then, look at your resources. How much is enough to live securely? That's your floor. Anything above it? That's fuel. Fuel for experiences, for impact, for depth. Use it. Strategically, but without apology. That money is only valuable if it touches something real, a moment, a person, a transformation. Next, integrate giving into your life now. Don't wait, don't hoard. Support the people and causes you care about while you can still feel it. Watch the ripple in real time. Share the joy. Teach through action. Giving doesn't mean draining yourself. It means aligning your money with your values instead of your fears. Finally, practice emotional permission. Give yourself the freedom to enjoy, to be present, to celebrate, to rest, to explore, to love fiercely, to say yes while you still can. That's not selfish. That's how we honor this life. Because in the end, you won't be remembered for what you saved. You'll be remembered for how you showed up. The laughs, the late night talks, the courage, the generosity, the spark. And that doesn't come from a plan. It comes from doing it now. So let your life be a story worth telling, not later, but today. Let your time be spent with intention. Let your money create moments. Let your energy move mountains while it still can. Die with zero, not because you ran out, but because you gave everything that mattered.
You've just seen what it really means to live a rich life. One where time matters more than money. Moments matter more than things. And presence is the most valuable currency of all. The goal isn't to hoard. The goal is to use every part of yourself while you still can. To leave this life empty because you gave it everything. So what will you do with your time? Because the clock is ticking, and someday isn't on the calendar. Thanks for watching. If this gave you something to think about, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your life is now.